Donald Trump just set a new record. And no, it's not one he wants to talk about. His approval rating has collapsed to historic lows. We're talking 26 points underwater. And here's what makes this even more significant. He's now doing worse than he did at this point in his first term. He's doing worse than Joe Biden was doing at the same point in his presidency. Let's watch this CNN report and I'll break it down for you at the end.
Let's take a look at another president, though. President Donald John Trump. Look at this. I got 4 numbers across for you on this screen here. They are all second-term lows for the given pollster. What are we talking about? AP New York, 26 points below water. NBC, 22 points below water. Yahoo YouGov, 20 points below water. Quinnipiac, 19 points below water. So we're ranging from negative 19 points all the way to negative 26 points. You know, Kate, there's this question that folks keep asking, where is the floor for Donald Trump? And I'm not sure there is a floor, because if there is one, Donald Trump, at least in term number 2, has just fallen through it to another low level.
How does this compare with his first term, and how does this compare with Joe Biden?
Okay, so we look at these numbers right here. One of the things that Donald Trump had been arguing, his proponents have been arguing, oh, you know what, he's doing better than he was doing in term number 1. No longer is that the case. What are we talking about here? Okay, net approval rating at this point in the term. Look at this. 22 points below water on average when you average all the pollsters from the last slide. That is actually lower. That is lower than he was at this point in term number 1, when he was 17 points below water. So he's doing 5 points worse, 5 points worse, and he's doing way worse than Joe Biden was doing at this point in his term number 1, when he was 13 points below water. So the bottom line is this: Donald Trump is setting new records for himself in term number 2, setting new records for himself compared to where he was at this point in term number 1, and he's doing worse than Joe Biden, which is, of course, the comparison that Donald Trump does not want to be, because we all know what happened to Joe Biden. His party lost the House in term number 1, that midterm elections, and, of course, Joe Biden was not reelected to another term. At this point, the numbers are no bueno for the President of the United States.
What's driving this that you're seeing right now?
Okay, Kate. You know what? This is the segment. We have done it over and over and over again because he keeps setting new lows for himself. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about independence. We're talking about independence. When you lose the center of the electorate, you lose the American people. Trump's net approval rating among independents, at this point, you go back term number 1, he was 17 points below water. Now, according to Quinnipiac, he is 27 points below water. I don't understand how this works out well for the President of the United States. When you are 27 points below water, underwater, with the center of the electorate, with independents, you lose, your party loses. I've made the comparisons before, oh, he's more underwater than Greg Louganis. I've made the comparisons with all those different divers. And the bottom line is this: you can continue to make those, but over time, when you keep making those same comparisons, they run a little bit old. But at this point, I don't really know who to even compare Donald Trump to, because he's just so low, and he's so low with the center of the electorate.
261 days to go. Yes, the midterms may seem far off, but they are starting to dominate the dynamics here in Washington and are fresh on President Trump's mind. As the GOP now confronts a daunting political environment, Trump is taking his pitch to the nation's battlegrounds, even before U.S. troops in North Carolina, where he urged them to vote Republican.
Biden, who is the worst president in the history of our country. 0 illegal aliens have been admitted into the United States, and that's done by the radical left. Michael, will you come here for a second, please? He's running for the Senate, and if he gets in, you're going to be taken care of. If he doesn't get in, we're going to be stripping the military like they always do, the Democrats. When I heard they were taking the name Fort Bragg off, I said, no, they're kidding. They're not going to do it. They did. They took the name off. We got it back very quickly, but they took it off. And if we don't win the midterms, they'll take it off again. It's another reason you have to vote for us, because they'll change it back to whatever it might be.
And this weekend, Trump also renewed his calls to place new restrictions on voting, as he started to see some fraying within his coalition, all while possible 2028 contenders, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, flocked to Europe this weekend, where they're getting some attention. Let's break this all down with my excellent panel: Tia Mitchell from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, CNN's Phil Mattingly, and Julie Davis from the New York Times. Good morning to you all. So look, Trump is, of course, as he does, demand total unity as we head into this very daunting stretch for the GOP. His party wants him to focus on issue number 1, the economy. And we've seen time and time again Trump trip on his own message or create distractions and do things that are causing significant pushback within the ranks. Just this past week, we saw the Justice Department try and fail to indict 6 House Democrats. A lot of Republicans uncomfortable with that. How he's handled these ICE surges, particularly in Minneapolis in recent weeks, has caused pushback among Republicans, nervous about going too far. Of course, that racist video of the Obamas that he later was forced to delete, though did not admit a mistake. Phil, how is this playing as we head into the midterms with his party?
Not great. I think, and Manu, honestly, like I watch you work the halls every single week, and it's always a really good barometer of when do we hit self-preservation mode for members of Congress? And I think that as powerful as Trump's grip on the party has been, and I think we should all be very careful to pronounce some grand break or diminishment of his authority over the Republican Party and over his members, which has been so kind of ironclad over the course of the last 13 months. But the moment where Republican lawmakers, particularly frontline Republican lawmakers, start looking around and say, if I need to actually win in November, I need to start creating some distance. Not dramatic scale of distance that we've seen perhaps in past administrations, but I think what we've seen over the course of the last couple of weeks, but in particular this week as well, is some of those members saying there are opportunities for me to break. The repercussions of that from Trump's Truth Social posts are not in the kind of cost-benefit analysis, bad enough for me to not want to risk this, and therefore I'm going to move forward. Is it a grand kind of fracturing of the party? Absolutely not.
And typically in a normal, what's normal anymore, but like in a previous administration, the president would be like, okay, break with me.
Every other president says, like, I get it. Like,
Yeah.
this is what you have to do. Trump is not that president, and how that dynamic plays out in the coming weeks, we're going to see more of this, is going to be really, really telling.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that that's why it's been as limited as it's been, right? We saw that tariff vote last week. You had 6 Republicans. That's not anywhere close to the universe of Republicans that if they wanted to, protect their political flank and guarantee success in their races, would have wanted to vote yes on that
Yeah.
to cancel the Canada tariffs.
There'd
But
probably be a lot more.
there are there are a couple in there who are retiring.
Yeah.
There's one in there who's redistricted into a bad position anyway. So this is not as dramatic of a shift as we normally see at this point in the cycle, where you have a party that realizes they need to get some distance from the sitting president. But part of that dynamic is because this particular president will not brook any kind of break whatsoever, even if he knows. He probably doesn't think about this, but that it's for his own political good, the good of his own people in Congress and keeping the majority.
And we're starting to see his messaging too, focusing, as he does, about voting, voter ID, which of course, voter ID is an issue that unites Republicans generally. There's no question about it. But Trump is going much further than most Republicans are, particularly when he talks about what he mentioned on Truth Social just over the weekend. He said there will be voter ID for the midterm elections, whether approved by Congress or not. Also, the people of our country are insisting on citizenship and no mail-in ballots, okay? And then he goes on to say, if I can't get this through Congress, there are legal reasons why this scam is not permitted. I will be presenting them shortly in the form of an executive order. What is he talking about? And states run elections, not the federal government. And here he is again saying that we will just do this, regardless if Congress approves this.
States run elections. The Constitution outlines some of this stuff. So what he's talking about, you can't do by executive order, and you can't do without violating the Constitution. It's the way our government was set up. But I don't think Donald Trump cares about that. I also just think it's so interesting because I'm old enough to remember when Republicans, state by state, started relaxing the mail-in ballot rules to allow more people to vote by mail.
I mean, a lot of Republicans want that to happen.
They want that
because
to happen.
They wouldn't have the majority if vote by mail did not exist.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And they know that the rollbacks of voting by mail could really hurt them in the long run because a lot of rural voters, a lot of voters in far-flung areas like that convenience of voting by mail. So it's just like it's problematic from a legal standpoint. It's problematic from just a purely political standpoint that he's pushing for things that a lot of Republicans don't agree with. Especially, it's one thing to say voter ID at the polls, and that's what a lot of Republican members of Congress are focusing on. But that is not all that what President Trump is asking for. He's talking about proof of citizenship, which again goes back to the fact that, yes, there are some states that have different rules because we have determined that, well, the Constitution outlines that states run their own elections. So wanting to nationalize voter registration guidelines is, again, something that Republicans have resisted.
Yeah.
Now, Trump and his supporters have been trying to argue that he's doing better in his second term than he was in his first, that he learned from his mistakes, that he's more disciplined, that the American people are happy to have him back. Well, the numbers completely destroy that narrative. At this point in his first term, Trump was 17 points underwater. Now he's 22 points underwater on average across all major polls. That's 5 points worse. He's not improving. He's getting worse. And remember what happened during Trump's first term. His party lost the House in the 2018 midterms. They got destroyed. And now he's even more unpopular than he was then. What do you think is going to happen in the 2026 midterms if this trajectory continues? But here's the comparison that really has to sting. Trump is doing worse than Joe Biden was doing at this point in his presidency. Biden at this same point was 13 points underwater. Trump is averaging 22 points underwater. That's 9 points worse than Biden. And we all know what happened to Biden. His party lost the House in 2022. His approval rating never recovered. And ultimately, he decided not to run for re-election in large part because the numbers were so bad. Trump doesn't want this comparison. His entire political brand was built on attacking Biden as the worst president in history. He ran on being the opposite of Biden, on fixing everything Biden supposedly broke. And now Trump is more unpopular than Biden was. His numbers are worse. The American people are less satisfied with his performance. How does that narrative work when the data completely contradicts it? But here's where it gets really bad for Republicans. Here's the number that should terrify every GOP strategist. Trump is 27 points underwater with independent voters, according to Quinnipiac. 27 points. At this point in his first term, he was 17 points underwater with independents. So he's fallen another 10 points with the voters who decide elections. When you lose the center of the electorate by 27 points, you lose. Your party loses. There's no way around it. Independents are the swing voters. They're the ones who aren't locked into either party. And when they turn against you by a 27-point margin, that's not a small problem you can overcome with turnout. That's a catastrophic collapse that predicts massive losses in competitive races. As Harry Enten said, "I don't understand how this works out well for the President of the United States when you are 27 points below water with the center of the electorate. You lose, your party loses." And he's absolutely right. There's no pathway to victory when you're this toxic with independent voters. Donald Trump has set a new record for unpopularity in his second term. He's doing worse than he did in his first term. He's doing worse than Joe Biden was doing at the same point. And he's lost independent voters by catastrophic margins. These are the numbers. These are the facts. And no amount of rallies or truth social posts or culture war grievances can change them. Republicans see the writing on the wall. Some of them are starting to create small amounts of distance. Some of them are quietly preparing for what comes after Trump. But most of them are still too afraid to openly break with him. They're trapped. They know he's hurting them. They know he's going to cost them seats. But they can't say it out loud because Trump will destroy anyone who questions him. So we're headed toward a midterm election where Republicans are saddled with a historically unpopular president who refuses to let them run their own campaigns, who creates constant distractions, who pushes unconstitutional policies that even his own party doesn't support, and who is losing the center of the electorate by margins we rarely see in American politics. The floor for Trump? There might not be one. He just keeps falling, and he's taking the Republican Party down with him. 261 days until the midterms, and every single day that Trump's approval stays this low is another day that Republicans' chances of keeping Congress get worse. Stay informed, watch these numbers, and remember that elections have consequences. This is what happens when you elect someone who cares more about personal grievances than governing. This is what happens when loyalty becomes more important than competence. This is what happens when a party can't break free from a leader who's destroying them. The numbers don't lie. And right now, they're telling a very clear story about what's coming in November. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss upcoming deep dives like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.